Has the serial killer known as the Doodler been identified? We'll talk about it next. At 1:57 a.m. on January 27, 1974, a corpse was found at the water's edge on San Francisco's Ocean Beach. Gerald Earl Kavanaugh, 49, had been stabbed multiple times. His body was, as the coroner's register put it, in a supine position and showed signs of slight rigor mortis. Very little is known about Kavanaugh. He was born in Canada on March 2, 1923, and lived in San Francisco. A photo that ran in the San Francisco Sentinel after his death shows that he was balding. He worked in a mattress factory. He was 5'8" and weighed 220 pounds. He was Catholic, never married, wrote the coroner. Kavanaugh was the first victim in a string of homicides that, to this day, remain unsolved. From January 1974 to September 1975, the Doodler, or, as he was sometimes known, the Black Doodler, caught the eye of the Castro's bar patrons by drawing caricatures and cartoons of them. Amused, flattered, perhaps thrilled by the attention, man after man would leave the bar with their killer for a more secluded, intimate spot. Once they were alone, the men were stabbed, and their bodies were left on waterfronts and in parks. But there were likely 5 or 6 victims. 5 men were contemporaneously identified in the newspapers as Doodler victims. 40 years after the fact, the story of the Doodler killings has not been even cursorily told. Unlike cases with similar body counts, the Zodiac Killer and David Berkowitz, for example, this one was quickly forgotten. It was, perhaps, somewhat a matter of timing. When the killings began, it had been just a year since the American Psychiatric Association Board of Trustees ceased classifying homosexuality as a disorder. Most media outlets, just maybe, did not consider gay men sufficiently sympathetic to rate coverage. A woman, never identified, found a body at Spreckles Lake in Golden Gate Park on June 25, 1974. Joseph Stevens, nicknamed Jay, had been stabbed 3 times. There was blood in his mouth and nose. He was last seen the previous night, leaving the Cabaret Club on Montgomery Street in the North Beach neighborhood. Police theorized that Stevens himself had driven the murderer to the park. He had worked as a crossdresser at the cabaret. Klaus Christmann, a 31-year-old German national and employee of Michelin, was the Doodler's 3rd victim. He was last seen alive at Bojangles. Christmann was found on July 7, 1974, at the foot of Lincoln Way by the beach. Tauba Weiss, now 88, was walking her dog when she discovered the body. The dog was running, and I followed him, she told me. I knew something was wrong. I saw a man lying there, and he wasn't moving. I knew he was dead. She returned home and called the police. Christmann's throat was slashed in 3 places, and he was stabbed at least 15 times. Inspector David Tashi, reported the Sentinel, described the murder as one of the most vicious stabbings he has ever seen. According to a Homicide Division information bulletin, Christmann was also found with a makeup tube in his pocket, which suggested homosexual propensities. On May 12, 1975, nearly a year since the murder of Klaus Christmann, the Doodler left another corpse. Frederick Elmer Kappen, 32, was found by a hiker behind a dune between Vicente and Aloha Streets. Kappen, 6 feet tall and alive 148 pounds. His coat and shirt were blood-soaked. Harold Goldberg was the Doodler's last, and, at 66, oldest, victim. He was found on June 4, 1975, on a Lincoln Park golf course by a hiker, 10 yards off the trail, slashed across the neck. His pants were unzipped, and he wore no undergarments. The San Francisco Chronicle reported that he'd been dead for approximately 2 weeks. Maggots and fly larvae occupied his face. Goldberg was Swedish and a sailor by profession. Police questioned a young man as a murder suspect in the case, but could not proceed with criminal charges because the 3 surviving victims did not want to out themselves by testifying against him in court. Among the stabbing survivors were a well-known entertainer and a diplomat. The suspect cooperated with police during his interview, but he never admitted guilt for the murders and attacks. Officers stated that they firmly believed that the man in question was responsible for the crimes, but he was never tried or convicted because the survivors refused to appear in court. The suspect has not been named publicly or apprehended. Very little information about the crimes is available to the public. The case is open and ongoing in the San Francisco Police Department. Recent successes using DNA technology developed in the decades since the crimes have led police to re-examine the evidence in the case. In February 2019, Police offered a $100,000 reward for information leading to the arrest of the killer and released a revised sketch showing what he could look like 4 decades later. They later announced they would consider forensic genetic genealogy, which identified a suspect in the Golden State Killer murders. That was our show for today. It's my first show looking at true crime, which has always fascinated me. What did you think? Did you know about the Doodler murders? Please let me know what you think in the comments section below, and I'd be honored if you subscribe to my channel. Please ring the bell to stay informed and check out my Carl Vincent Vampire Hunter franchise also in the comments section. Until next time, this is Axel and for Kevin Givens saying, live long and prosper, may the force be with you, and keep reaching for the stars.